I'd like to be Pope. That would be my number one choice.
Ladies and gentlemen, just when you thought Trump couldn't get any more controversial, here comes an AI-generated image of him dressed as the Pope. That's right. The same man who publicly questions the validity of science now wants to bless us all with his version of divine power. But is this shocking image really that surprising when we look at the top 10 most un-Pope-like things Donald Trump has done throughout his career? Spoiler alert, most popes would probably need to confess for half of this list. Before we dive into this holy list of blasphemous behavior, I need a small favor. If you enjoy this content, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch without subscribing, and you know what? That's almost as un-Pope-like as anything Trump's done. So, hit that button and make a holy gesture for us. Great. Thanks a million. Now, let's get to the sacrilege.
I have never gone bankrupt, by the way. I have never.
That's your line, but your companies have gone bankrupt.
Now let's start with a classic, Trump's countless bankruptcies. Most business people view bankruptcy as a last resort, something you'd only consider after exhausting all other options. But not Trump. For him, bankruptcy wasn't a failure. It was practically a business strategy.
I've taken advantage of the laws of this country, like other people.
In fact, it's almost like his very own Hail Mary. With a flick of the pen, he dodged paying debts and left contractors holding the bag. It's as if Trump thought bankruptcy was just another way to manage his success. Can you imagine if the Pope pulled a similar move?
I want to give you the opportunity. Is there anybody you'd like to apologize to right now yourself?
No.
No?
Sorry, Vatican, but we can't pay those debts. We're declaring bankruptcy and starting a GoFundMe. A saintly maneuver indeed. But for Trump? Just another Tuesday. This strategy was so successful, it was like watching the Pope wander the streets, saying, "It's not stealing if you can get away with it."
Whatever you want.
Grab him by the I can do anything.
Ah yes, the tape. The infamous grab 'em by the PUSSY statement. Imagine a Pope uttering those words. I mean, we're talking about a guy who makes self-promotion look like a bad reality TV show, but even for him, that was a swing and a miss. Trump, of course, shrugged it off. For him, the locker room talk excuse was as transparent as a glass chalice.
She is terrific in bed. Now, she wouldn't want me to say that.
I never thought she was good looking.
But she had the height, she had the beauty, she had the skin, the whole thing. She was crazy, but, these are minor details.
Let's face it, no pope in the history of the church has ever considered, let alone spoken, such crude words. Hell, even if you threw a bunch of popes in a room and gave them a truth serum, they'd still be 1,000 miles away from that level of disgrace. It's about as far from "Father, forgive me" as you can get. Honestly, if the Pope had a grab him by the kitty moment, it would be more like, "Father, let us pray for Trump, and that his soul might one day find humility."
We have to have a wall, we have to have a border, and in that wall, we're going to have a beautiful, big, fat door.
Ah, the Great Wall of Trump. And no, it's not the one in China. It's the metaphorical one he wants to build to keep out anyone who isn't a real American. Trump's wall was a symbol of fear, division, and selfishness. Popes build bridges. Trump builds walls. And not just physical walls between countries, he's erecting emotional, cultural, and intellectual barriers too. He's the Pope of separation, saying, "Let's put a fence around our hearts and minds while we're at it." If Pope Francis saw Trump's wall, he'd probably cry. Not for the wall itself, but because it stood in stark opposition to the papal message of compassion, tolerance, and inclusivity. But for Trump, it's more about securing the borders, even if it means closing the door on kindness, diversity, and basic human decency.
I alone can fix it.
I alone can fix it. These are the words of a man who's too busy with his ego to recognize the humble service that true leadership requires. If Trump was Pope, his confessional would look less like a place for introspection and more like a spot where he checks himself out in the mirror, muttering, "Damn, I'm good." Popes by nature serve others. They don't tell people they're the only ones who can solve the world's problems.
And I'm a very good Christian because the Pope said something to the effect that maybe Donald Trump isn't Christian, okay? And he's questioning my faith. I was very surprised to see it, but I am a Christian. I'm proud of it.
Yet Trump, with all the arrogance of a man who built his empire on inherited wealth and TV fame, swears that the world's salvation depends entirely on his leadership. If Trump had been Pope, his papal bulls would have been more like papal bragging rights.
Wall Street Journal has truly gone to hell. Go ahead. Yeah, rotten newspaper. You hear me what I said? It's a rotten newspaper.
Now we all know that Trump's relationship with the press has been less holy and more, I'm going to burn this bridge down with a flamethrower. Trump's attack on the press, his constant shouts of fake news, is the modern-day equivalent of the Pope calling all divine teachings fake news. The Pope preaches peace, compassion, and truth. Trump, he prefers distrust and destruction. The media, a tool for stirring division. If Trump were Pope, he would have been issuing papal decrees on how to avoid media exposure, not the usual prayers for the faithful. Imagine Pope Francis saying, you know what, guys? Let's get rid of the whole church media thing. It's all fake. Yeah, that would go over well. But Trump, he's more about creating chaos and attacking those who challenge his views, like a rogue Vatican cardinal who only listens to his own gospel. The Pope is known for promoting peace, reconciliation, and the love of all people. Trump, however, has shown a rather odd affection for the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. Imagine the Pope giving Putin a warm hug and saying, you know, I think you've got this whole autocratic rule thing nailed down. That's the exact opposite of what the Pope does when it comes to world diplomacy. The Pope believes in the power of compassion, collaboration, and humanitarian aid. Trump, meanwhile, thinks diplomacy is about giving a Russian leader a thumbs up and maybe a business deal or two. If Trump were Pope, he'd probably be too busy hosting Putin in the Vatican, cutting deals, and looking over the Russian gold leaf collection to worry about human rights or democratic values.
Very fine people on both sides.
When Trump said there were very fine people on both sides of the Charlottesville rally, he might as well have handed a victory to white supremacists. Imagine the Pope giving such a speech. Oh, you know, there are some really good racists out there. I mean, who am I to judge? Yeah, no Pope would ever say that. Ever. If the Pope had spoken that way, we'd be dealing with the most unholy papacy in history. The Pope stands against bigotry and hate. Trump, unfortunately, has often been accused of encouraging it. It's not just un-Pope-like. It's universal moral outrage at its finest.
They lay out several donations that he made to charities in order to settle lawsuits. One of them involved Mar-a-Lago. It was a $100,000 donation to a veterans charity, and it was to settle fines that Mar-a-Lago owned Palm Beach over some sort of a dispute about a flagpole. Of course, it is illegal to use a charity's money to benefit yourself or your businesses.
When it comes to charity, Trump's record looks suspiciously un-Pope-like. In fact, his personal charity, the Trump Foundation, was so dodgy that it was forced to shut down after misusing funds for personal expenses. Meanwhile, the Pope is known for his genuine charity work, giving back without ever asking for anything in return. Trump's charitable donations almost look like they belong in a how to scam manual. The Pope's charity is about selflessness, humility, and providing for the poor. Trump's, however, was more about keeping things in the family, literally with donations to Trump properties. Not exactly the behavior of a humble leader or servant of the people.
For the first time ever, a president has been impeached twice.
Being impeached twice? Pretty un-Pope-like, if you ask me. Imagine the Pope getting caught up in a scandal so big, even the Vatican couldn't ignore it. Trump, however, wore it like a badge of honor. Not exactly the kind of humility you'd expect from a world leader, or from a man who's supposed to be a servant of the people. Instead of turning the other cheek, he was turning the impeachment committee into a press conference and still managed to come out boasting. If this had been a Pope, well, I'm pretty sure the Vatican would have seen the exit stage left sign flashing. And finally, the pièce de résistance, Trump posting a selfie of himself as the Pope. Oh yes, this happened. The Pope is a symbol of humility, spiritual leadership, and unwavering faith. Trump, on the other hand, is a symbol of self-promotion and vanity. If there were ever a more un-Pope-like thing to do, it would be posting an image of yourself as the Pope for all the world to see. It's the most blatant mockery of the Holy See since, well, ever. So there you have it, folks. Trump's top 10 un-Pope-like moments. If anything, it's clear that he's far from the holiest of men. But hey, if the Pope ever needs a backup, he's got a very unholy contender ready to take over.